The battle between the new king, Arutai, and his younger sister, Aruna, has already begun. On the other side, Wu Qi, king of Wu, was overjoyed upon receiving news from the messenger that Jinzhua Marquis had been assassinated and Qiu Hao, the lord of Skywind City, had pledged allegiance to Wu. He immediately ordered the southern campaign from Wu. General Wumu led nearly 30,000 troops aboard ships, sailing south along the coast, with plans to capture the Thunderous Islands and seize Furious Tide City officially underway. Wumu stood proudly at the bow of the ship, his expression haughty, with eyes as sharp as a hawk, looking towards Furious Tide City. Now that Jinzhua was assassinated and the defense of Furious Tide City weakened, not exceeding 5,000 troops, without a leader, the troops must be panicking and demoralized. It really is a blessing to our Wu, as if heaven decreed that I, Wumu, shall achieve unprecedented success in this battle. Just wait peacefully for the triumphant news of my great achievement. After sailing a day and night on the sea, they soon arrived at Skywind City under Qiu Hao's jurisdiction, which had become a transit and rest stop for Wu's ground forces. Although Furious Tide City was less than 100 miles from Skywind City, these soldiers were not navy. Prolonged time at sea had left most of them seasick and lethargic, rendering them unable to fight. They had to stop here for a few days to recuperate. At that moment, Wumu and Qiu Hao stood side by side on the watchtower of the castle, looking towards Furious Tide City. Then, Wumu asked, General Zhenhai, how much do you know about the Jin family's naval capabilities? With a scornful smile, Qiu Hao replied, they are just a bunch of landlubbers and used to water warfare, nothing to be afraid of. Hearing this, Wumu felt much reassured and laughed. If that's the case, I entrust you with full responsibility for the sea defense for the next 3 days. We will advance to Furious Tide City in 3 days, and during this time, there must not be any enemy ships threatening us, ensuring our landing plan can proceed smoothly. Qiu Hao slapped his chest and assured, rest assured, as long as my fleet is in battle, no enemy will dare show up on the sea. Meanwhile, not far from New River County, an inconspicuous sea vessel was silently making its way towards Furious Tide City. In the cabin, a woman dressed in a Taoist robe with white hair sat at a table eating. She was Lin Sang, Wang Feng's master, known as the Old Demon of Snow Mountain. At that moment, Wang Tong, the president of the Heavenly Path Society, was respectfully asking Lin Sang what kind of wine she would like to pair with her meal. Unexpectedly, upon hearing Huang Tong address her as master, Lin Sang suddenly became furious. Huang Tong, what do you mean? You know I'm not a grandmaster, yet you still call me master. Are you mocking me? As soon as she said this, Huang Tong hurriedly laughed and tried to comfort her, but internally he was bitterly complaining. This deity is really difficult to serve, so proud and with such a bad temper. If it weren't for the fact that she owed the Heavenly Path Society a huge favor and they genuinely needed a master this time, he really wouldn't want to invite her. Originally, Lin Sang was a disciple from the Demon Rock Mountain Taoist Palace. In her pursuit of the sect leader position, she challenged Grandmaster Ban Ruo several times but was defeated each time. Humiliated, she left the Demon Rock Temple in anger, established her own sect, and founded the Snow Mountain Temple. Unexpectedly, the emergence of Shuayin reignited her fighting spirit, but the vast gap in their techniques led to her harsh defeat once again. These consecutive setbacks left Lin Sang frustrated, but she could only suppress her anger and retreat back to the Snow Mountain Temple. What's worse, after this, whenever disciples of the Snow Mountain Temple made any progress in their cultivation, they would find excuses to switch to the Demon Rock Temple, claiming that the techniques of both sides were interchangeable. Oh, where isn't it learning martial arts? It's the same wherever you go. But everyone clearly understood that the Demon Rock Temple offered better treatment and environment. Under such continuous oppression, the development of the Snow Mountain Temple became increasingly bleak. At this time, the Heavenly Path Society appeared. Not only did they stop the Demon Rock Temple from poaching people, but they also donated money to the Snow Mountain Temple every year, which allowed Lin Sang to keep going. At this moment, Lin Sang was still furiously shouting in the cabin, Huang Tong, are you an idiot? Can't you match the drink with what I'm eating right now? Huang Tong was nearly in tears, but for the sake of the upcoming plans, he had to swallow his pride and keep smiling. After pacifying Lin Sang, he finally managed to stabilize this formidable deity. The moment he turned around, Huang Tong couldn't help but worry about Jinzhua. As long as he delivered Lin Sang and her disciples to Furious Tide City, his mission would be considered complete. After that, it would be the mythical Turtle Marquis's turn to suffer. Although Lin Sang had a bad temper, her strength was second only to the 6 grandmasters. Under her protection, the safety of the mythical Turtle Marquis should be secure. The Jin family and the Heavenly Path Society are tied together, already becoming the center of the Heavenly Path Society in the entire East. If the Jin family were to lose Furious Tide City in this battle, it would be a disaster. The scene returns to Arunana's Snow Mountain tribe. At this moment, the monk soldiers of the Great Calamity Temple are vigorously pushing the battering rams, striking the tribe's walls repeatedly. Before long, the frail walls were successfully breached. Following that, countless troops under Arutai shouted slogans and waved their weapons as they stormed into the Snow Mountain tribe through the breach. However, the next second, the soldiers at the forefront were stunned by what they saw. A giant-like figure figure, Big Fool, was swinging a steel blade, his eyes red, charging straight at them. Before they could recover from their shock, they were flung away by a sweeping strike from Big Fool. At this moment, Urutai, who was commanding the battle from a short distance, was also shocked by Big Fool's terrifying combat effectiveness. I really underestimated this Big Fool. I had only heard that he was a supreme martial arts genius, but I never expected him to be this strong. If such a person cannot be utilized, then he must be eliminated. Meanwhile, Sword King Li Qianqiu, watching the battle from within the tribe, fell into a state of despair once again. He's too strong. In less than half an hour, Big Fool has eliminated at least 200 soldiers. Even if I were to join the battle, I could only achieve half of his tally. Although Big Fool was not good in single combat, his chaotic and unstructured fighting style on the battlefield was virtually invincible. Li Qianqiu couldn't help but sigh again. What's the point of practicing martial arts anymore? As an explosion sounded, another wall of the Snow Mountain tribe collapsed under the concerted efforts of the monk soldiers from the Great Calamity Temple. Following that, the soldiers under Urutai surged forward like a tidal wave, and once again, they breached the interior of the tribe. Shenlang, seeing Big Fool fiercely fighting on the other side and realizing the strength of his forces, no longer worried. He immediately turned to Wu Lai and ordered, "The time has come, Wu Lai." As his words fell, several explosions sounded in the distance. The next second, the walls were ablaze, and screams of agony filled the air. Countless soldiers from Chan country, on fire, fled from the tribe. In an instant, the entire valley became a sea of flames. Urutai was stunned, and Kunan and others were also frozen in shock by the sudden explosion and the tragic scene before them. Not knowing what to do, Shenlang seized this opportunity to issue another order. "Everyone listen, abandon all horses, put on thick clothes, take enough food, and follow me up the Great Snow Mountain." Hearing this, Aruna was taken aback, then hurriedly said, "Shen Young Master, do you know what you are talking about? There is nothing on that snow mountain. We will only freeze and starve to death." Shenlang chuckled lightly, then picked up the map in his hand, pointing to a location, and said, "Don't worry, nothing will happen. Our destination is Great Calamity Palace. I have already set a trap there. If the Chan King's army follows us up, I will ensure they never return, completely annihilated." Originally, when Shenlang decided to support Aruna 2 or 3 months ago, he had already chosen Great Calamity Palace as the decisive battleground for this campaign. At that time, due to the inability to find saltpeter, the production of gunpowder was extremely low, not enough to sustain a conventional battle. But he knew well that if he could utilize the terrain of Great Calamity Palace, the little gunpowder they had could play a critical role, which would be sufficient. "Urutai, rage as much as you want. I will wait for you at Great Calamity Palace, and it will become the burial ground for you and the Chan army." Over an hour later, the great fire in the valley was finally extinguished. At this time, the leading soldiers stepped over the bodies on the ground and came to Urutai. Urutai, with a gloomy face, asked coldly, "How many did we lose?" The soldier trembled as he replied, About 3,000 people." Upon hearing this, Urutai immediately flew into a rage. How could so many have died? The soldier hurriedly explained, "The fire was too fierce. Less than 1,000 died in battle, but more than 2,000 were burned or trampled to death." Upon hearing this explanation, Urutai felt his blood boil and almost lost his composure. However, he forcefully suppressed his anger and continued to ask, "Where did Aruna and Shenlang's armies go?" The soldier replied, "Just now, a scout reported that they have ascended the Snow Mountain, heading towards Great Calamity Palace." Hearing this, Urutai's eyes twitched fiercely. "To Great Calamity Palace? That place is now nothing but ruins. Do they really think they can hold out at Great Calamity Palace? It's simply a death wish." After pondering for a moment, he ordered, "Everyone, put on thick clothes, take enough food, and head to Great Calamity Palace immediately to pursue and kill Aruna and Shenlang." Upon hearing this, Su Jianting and Suamo became anxious. The deep snow on the mountain would definitely affect the march, and this would delay the meeting with the Su Chang forces. Once the Chu Kingdom starts attacking Zhongyao's army, their father Sunan would surely rise in rebellion. No, they could not afford any more delays over this matter. Thinking this, Su Jianting quickly stepped forward to persuade, "Your Majesty, Shenlang and Aruna have only 3,000 remnants. Even if they escape to Great Calamity Palace, they will surely die from cold and starvation. There's no need for you to personally lead troops to chase them. Why not send 10,000 troops to handle this matter at Great Calamity Palace? This way, it won't delay your plans to lead the main army into Western Celestial Province to meet with my father." However, Urutai was unmoved and coldly said, "Chan country is my biggest domain, and there can only be one king in all of Chan country. I must personally take Arunana's head." Seeing this, Suamo also stepped forward to persuade, "Why not have your Majesty lead 20,000 troops to kill Aruna at Great Calamity Palace, and delegate another 20,000 to a general appointed by you to follow us into Western Celestial Province? Would that be acceptable?" After hearing this, Urutai sneered and then pushed Suamo away. "Don't be delusional. My soldiers can only be led by me. Prepare the troops now, and follow me to Great Calamity Palace." Seeing that Urutai was not listening, Su Jianting simply knelt down before him. "Shenlang is extremely cunning, and I fear that on the way to Great Calamity Palace, there will be traps and ambushes set set up. Chiu Tianwei's army of 30,000 was precisely killed by his schemes on Cliffwatch Island. Hearing this, Urutai couldn't help but burst out laughing. Su Jianting, it seems Shenlang has scared you out of your wits. Shenlang and Aruna are clearly cornered. As long as my army follows closely, even if they set up ambushes in the mountains, what can they do with just over 3,000 people? Urutai's words left Su Jianting speechless. Although he's right, from what I know about Shenlang, he must have fled to Great Calamity Palace with a plan in mind. Of course, Urutai is not foolish. He immediately turned to Monk Kunan and said, Master Kunan, aren't you in a hurry to return to Great Calamity Palace? How about having your monk soldiers lead the way? Upon hearing this, Monk Kunan's expression darkened instantly. Urutai really knows how to calculate, clearly wanting us to act as his shields. Despite his extreme reluctance, he still joked with a smile. They say the Chan King is bravely unmatched, yet it turns out he is as timid as a mouse. I shall take the lead then. Seeing Monk Kunan agree so readily, Urutai didn't mind the irony in his words and immediately ordered all soldiers to prepare their supplies and get ready to set out. At this moment, Su Jianting, following behind the troop, looked at the army ahead and felt an increasingly strong sense of unease. Shenlang, what exactly is your plot? Meanwhile, inside the Su family's castle, Sunan looked at the battle map before him. Though he appeared calm on the surface, he was actually anxious. His tens of thousands of troops were already in place, ready to sweep across the entire western celestial province and the province of the southern journey at his command. But though this ripe opportunity was within his grasp, he had to suppress his urge to act, waiting for Chu Kingdom to make the first move. Now is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. King of Chu, what are you waiting for? Just as he was growing anxious, his confidant Suyong rushed in. My lord, good news. The Chu Kingdom's army has started their attack. Upon hearing this, Sunan could hardly contain his elation and hurriedly asked, is this true? Are they really fighting or just putting on a show? Suyong replied, it's real. The Chu army launched an attack with such ferocity that they stunned Zhongyao's forces, already capturing over a dozen castles and fortresses. After hearing this, Sunan suppressed the excitement in his heart and began to think calmly. No, I still need to wait. I must not act impulsively, as the Chu army might still be testing the waters. With this thought, he issued another order. Suyong, continue to gather intelligence and make sure no detail is missed. Soon after, a series of battle reports and confidential letters were delivered to Sunan. The clear content of these letters confirmed one thing: Chu Kingdom had indeed gone to war. By this time, Sunan was so excited that he was trembling. Finally, the moment has come. My Su family is about to be reborn from the ashes. Send the orders. Go to war. My Su family will rise in rebellion. Sunan then officially issued a proclamation listing the myriad crimes of King Ning Yuanxian. The proclamation vehemently criticized Ning Yuanxian for his luxurious lifestyle, wastefulness, and arbitrary execution of loyal and good officials. My Su family had no intention of rebellion, but for the safety of the people of Western Celestial Province, we now have no other choice. From today onwards, the Su family will lead the 7 counties of Western Celestial Province to officially declare independence and completely break away from the rule of King Yu. I, Sunan, hereby call upon all the established nobles of Yu Kingdom to uphold justice and jointly oppose the tyranny of King Yu. We are in accordance with the heavenly way. What is there to fear? With the Su family's act of rebellion against you, the content of the proclamation spread quickly across the world. Every country was shocked by its content. The kings of Wu and Chu sent envoys to offer their condolences, not only strongly condemning the tyranny of Ning Yuanxian, but also recognizing the autonomy of the Su family's territories immediately. Noble Lord Jin of Southern Ouyang also issued a statement supporting Sunan, expressing that Southern Ouyang would like to form a brotherly alliance with the Su Chan. As the proclamation spread and Sunan openly rebelled, Yu Kingdom was plunged into a precarious situation. During this time, the Su family's army swept through like a breaking bamboo, quickly capturing many cities in White Knight County. In just 3 days, Sunan's army swiftly captured 6 major cities around White Knight County, with only the main city held by Zhang Chong left unconquered. At this point, Sunan immediately ordered Su Quan to lead 10,000 troops, 5,000 mercenaries from the western regions, and 3,000 monk soldiers from Great Calamity Temple to attack White Knight County day and night. Later, he also added 3,000 troops in Snow Bright City on the essential southern route of Jingtuo's army, completely cutting off this passage. Zhang Chong has a total of 8,000 defenders. Everything was going so smoothly that Sunan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. This time, I really have to thank Shenlang. If he hadn't led people to wreak havoc in White Knight County before, my Su family would not have so easily captured these 6 cities. Next, as long as we break through Zhang Chong's defenses and capture White Knight County, my Su family's army can sweep through the entire southern part of Western Celestial Province, then marching north to attack White Knight Pass. By that time, Yu Kingdom will be put on the defensive, and with Chu and my Su family attacking from the north and south, Yu Kingdom will undoubtedly be defeated. However, the only dissatisfaction now is with Chan country. Urutai, do you really need to take all 40,000 troops to kill Aruna? Are you worried that my Su family will take away your military power? 2 days later, the main city was engulfed in flames. In just an hour and a half, the outskirts of White Knight County, defended by Zhang Chong, were shrouded in gunsmoke and strewn with corpses. At this moment, Zhang Chong stood on the city wall, overlooking the tragic scene below, and couldn't help but fall into contemplation. I didn't expect that the siege troops sent by the Su family this time would be so fierce, and the monk soldiers from Great Calamity Temple and the mercenaries from the western regions are highly skilled and fearless. It can be said that each of their armies is extremely difficult to deal with. If it weren't for the 3,000 elite warriors I brought, along with the 6 leader of 1,000 households officers allocated by His Majesty, we probably wouldn't have held out until now. Just then, a leader of 1,000 households officer, wounded all over, approached with a troubled expression and said, "Prefect, the battle has just begun and it's already so fierce. I'm worried we won't be able to hold on." After hearing this, Zhang Chong took a deep breath and reassured with a smile. "Don't worry, siege warfare is always fiercest at the onset, then it weakens, and finally exhausts. Just endure today, and the situation will definitely improve. Besides, our reinforcements are almost here. Just hold on a little longer." His words were like a tranquilizer for the leader of 1,000 households officer, immediately boosting his confidence. "Thank you, Prefect, for your clear guidance. Now I have a clear idea of what to expect." After speaking, he got up to replace his colleague and continued to fight. All this was observed by Ning Jia, the disguised princess, who clearly understood that Zhang Chong's words were just to boost morale. The battles to come would only get tougher each day. The worst days were just beginning. After a moment of thought, she approached Zhang Chong and asked, "Mr. Zhang, do you know when Jing Tuo's reinforcement army will arrive?" Zhang Chong was silent for a long while before replying, "Perhaps, when we can no longer hold out, Jing Tuo's army will appear." His gaze turned to the soldiers fighting valiantly behind him, his heart filled with melancholy. He knew well that even if reinforcements arrived, they wouldn't engage the Su family's army besieging the city. The disparity in forces was simply too great. Their only role would be to boost morale. To put it bluntly, these 3,000 defenders were merely cannon fodder for the emperor, meant to be sacrificed. Their task now was to do their utmost to hold off the Su family's army until a breakthrough could be made in the northern front. As another thunderous battle cry rose from below, the Su family's forces surged forward like a tidal wave once again. From behind the Su forces, Commander Su Quan, watching this formidable onslaught, felt his blood begin to boil. This battle was crucial for Western Celestial Province. Once White Knight County was captured, there would be no resistance left in the southern part of Western Celestial Province. At that point, Sunan would be promoted to a prince of the state, and he himself might be ennobled as a marquis. Thinking of this, Su Quan became uncontrollably excited and roared, "Soldiers, attack with all your might. The Lord has commanded. Take down White Knight County within 3 days. Once the city is ours, all its treasures are yours to take." With these words, the morale of the Su family's troops skyrocketed, and they launched a ferocious attack on the city walls without regard. Watching the Su troops continuously climb up the ladders, Zhang Chong quickly joined the battle. At this moment, he had only one belief: no reinforcements, no retreat, just hold on until the end, fight to the death. While Zhang Chong led the remaining 4,000 U troops in a desperate defense against the ferocious siege by the Su family's army, news of Sunan's rebellion and the issuance of his proclamation reached King Wu's camp on the northern front of Yu Kingdom without delay. At this moment, King Wu, looking at the secret letter in his hand, could hardly conceal his exhilaration. Sunan has finally rebelled. The opportunity for my Wu country to avenge its humiliation has finally come. Ning Yuanxian, when you annexed 9 counties of my Wu country during the glamorous province incident, did you ever imagine a day when the whole world would turn against you? Now, you face not only the rebellion of Sunan's tens of thousands of troops, but also a triple threat from Wu country, Chu country, and Chang country. If I seize this opportunity to defeat you, then I, Wu Qi, will become renowned throughout the world. What my Wu country will reclaim will be much more than just 9 counties. Thinking this, King Wu immediately decreed, "Wu Ji, listen to my command. Continue to deploy troops to hold the northern line and wait for Yu Kingdom's internal strife. Then I will start the real decisive battle with Ning Yuanxian. We must not be unprepared for this." Startled by these words, Wu Ji then asked with a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, from where shall I deploy the troops? Isn't our decisive battle with King Yu supposed to be a feint?" King Wu sneered and said, "Deploy troops from the west." Although this dual king's battle was initially intended as a feint, given the current situation, it might well become real. Meanwhile, inside Weno Castle in King Yu's camp, Ning Yuanxian, clutching Sunan's proclamation, his face ashen with rage, exclaimed, "Well done, Sunan, daring to compare me to a tyrant from ancient times. Why don't you just declare me the worst tyrant in history?" However, when he read what followed, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Shenlang, you're quite something. To think that you, a mere 6th rank official, would also be included in Sunan's proclamation. It's utterly ridiculous." After laughing, Li Ji, with a look of concern, spoke up, "Your Majesty, about Duke Bianzhao, is it time for him to strike? If he could act sooner, Zhang Chong could be relieved a day earlier." However, as soon as he spoke, Ning Yuanxian flatly refused. "It's not time yet." Seeing this, the 3rd Prince Ning Ning Chi felt anxious inside. With the situation this urgent, why does my father still say it's not time? Just as he was puzzled, King Yu suddenly ordered, Ning Chi, you are to lead 30,000 troops south immediately and return to the capital city. This command shocked Ning Chi. This is too risky. Right now, Wu country has assembled 120,000 troops, and my Yu kingdom has only 110,000, barely an equal match. But if I take 30,000 away, that leaves only 80,000. It's risky that King Wu might make a move. Hearing this, Ning Yuanxian looked at Ning Chi with a serious expression and said, that's settled then. How can we tempt the enemy if the bait isn't enticing enough? My reign, since it has begun, must be played to the fullest. Then, he turned to Li Ji and said, send the decree. Sunan has rebelled, and I am enraged. I now command the third prince Ning Chi to lead 30,000 troops back to guard the capital city. Set off immediately. Upon hearing this order, Ning Chi hurriedly knelt down, terrified and trying to persuade, Father, this must not be done. It would be better for you to lead the troops back to the capital city and let your son stay to confront King Wu. However, King Yu shook his head firmly. No need for further discussion. It's decided. Only with me, the king of Yu, remaining here can we sufficiently distract Wu Qi. Seeing Ning Yuanxian's resolve, Ning Chi had no choice but to obey the imperial decree, leading 30,000 troops, along with the reluctant and fierce General Lan Bao, on the journey back to the capital city. Of course, as soon as Ning Chi and his forces had left Weno Castle, this news reached King Wu's camp. Regarding King Yu's strategy, the soldiers of Wu country laughed heartily, finding it incredibly foolish, believing that he must have lost his mind to make such a blunder, and King Wu's face was filled with scorn. This Ning Yuanxian is 100 times more foolish than I imagined. At the border hunting meet, after he lost, he became furiously enraged, led his troops personally, and wanted to have a decisive battle with me. Now, with Sunan's army still thousands of miles away, he's worried about the security of the capital city, hastily sending troops back to defend Yu's capital. As his voice fell, the two officers fell silent. Then, one of them stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, Glamorous Province is currently vulnerable. Why don't we attack Glamorous Province first? Capturing Glamorous Province would also serve as redemption for our past disgrace and restore the glory of our ancestors. Hearing this, King Wu sneered and countered, Given the current situation, do you think it's easier to defeat Bian Shao or Ning Yuanxian? Is Glamorous Province more formidable, or is Weno Castle harder to attack? I suppose there's no need for me to elaborate further. King Wu's analysis left them speechless, and they could only bow their heads and comply with his will. As Wu country's western army advanced east, King Yu also received news immediately. He's taken the bait. King Wu has indeed taken the bait. At this moment, Ning Yuanxian was exhilarated. His high-stakes gamble had paid off. Next, he needed to precisely estimate the time when Wu country's western army would enter the ambush zone. Otherwise, with 150,000 troops against 80,000, Yu kingdom would suffer greatly. Now, just waiting for them to approach Wu's camp, he planned to have Bian Shao lead his troops to strike them unexpectedly. Thinking this, he immediately ordered, Li Ji, quickly convey my command. Let Bian Shao lead the elite troops to ambush Wu country's advancing western army. Adhere to the principle of the speed being paramount in warfare, and do not engage in prolonged fighting. Just push forward all the way until King Wu is trembling with fear. On the Great Snow Mountain, Shenlang, Aruna, and others were struggling along the mountain path leading to Great Calamity Palace. While the others were managing alright, Shenlang's physical strength was gradually giving out. For him, considered a man living off a woman in this life, walking on this deeply snowed path was truly a torment. After marching for 5 full days, they finally reached the summit of the snow mountain. What came into view was the once famous Great Calamity Palace of the Eastern world. Even though the Great Calamity Palace was now reduced to ruins, the remnants of its majestic architecture still astonished everyone present. At that moment, Shenlang turned to the warriors of the Heavenly Path Society and said, Go, retrieve the supplies we had hidden here beforehand. Following the order, these warriors skillfully opened the underground palace and took out a large amount of clothing, food, and dried cow dung for fuel. Seeing the supplies before her, Aruna was incredulous. My God, did you really prepare all this in advance? Shenlang shrugged. Of course, I, Shenlang, never enter a battle unprepared. After saying this, he muttered under his breath, What a foolish queen. All these items were purchased from your tribe. Then, we gradually transported the supplies here. Shenlang sighed helplessly, then turned to Yin Yang and asked, How long until Arutai's army reaches here? Yin Yang respectfully replied, Based on their current pace, they should arrive in about 2 days. Shenlang nodded at this, then called over Wu Lai and ordered, Yin Yang, keep your men on constant watch for the enemy's movements. Wu Lai, you personally take command of the troops and set up defenses in the plaza below Great Calamity Palace. Both of you, do not act rashly. If there's any sign of the enemy, report to me immediately. Immediately after, he shouted behind him, Everyone else, don't just stand there. Follow me into the palace to find a place to rest and recuperate. Upon hearing this order, Aruna immediately looked puzzled. Rest? Are we going to fight? Hearing this, Shenlang revealed a mysterious smile and said, We don't need to take action yet. We just need to make sure everyone is well fed and rested. 2 days later, Wu Lai hurriedly reported, Shen Young Master, the enemy has arrived. At this moment, Shenlang looked towards another towering snow mountain in the distance, a cunning look appearing on his face. They're finally here. It seems another spectacular show of earth-shattering destruction and the slaughter of tens of thousands of troops is about to unfold. The timeline returns to Furious Tide City. Since the news of the assassination of the mythical turtle Marquis, the citizens of the entire city seemed convinced the Jean family is finished and Furious Tide City is about to change hands again. At that moment, in a certain shop within the city, a shifty-eyed shopkeeper cautiously looked around before hurriedly preparing to close the shop door. Just as he was closing the last door, a mysterious figure flashed in, unnoticed by the shopkeeper, who proceeded straight towards the back of the shop. Moments later, in the secret room of the shop, the mysterious man had just sat down when a seductively posed woman lit a candle in her hand and walked towards him. As the candlelight flared, it also illuminated the man's face, Jean Shuring. At this moment, the woman put down the candle holder and then casually sat on his lap. Jean Shuring immediately turned his face away awkwardly. Seeing his reaction, the woman laughed coquettishly. General Jean Shuring, we've shared a bed several times now. Why are you still so shy? After saying this, she planted a kiss on his cheek. Jean Shuring hoarsely explained, I thought you were a woman in distress, so I reached out to help, never expecting you to drug me, which led me to sleep with you in confusion. Hearing this, the woman couldn't help but laugh. The first time was because of the drug, but what about after that? Clearly, you couldn't resist me. At this, Jean Shuring found himself laughingly at a loss for words. Seeing his frustration, she quickly leaned in, pouting, My lord, are you angry? Wouldn't an apology from me suffice? After speaking, she lightly parted her lips and kissed him directly. Her action left Jean Shuring's mind completely blank. The last bit of his rationality still pushed him to pull away from her. I'm sorry, let's discuss the serious matters first. Interrupted, the woman paused for a moment, then with seductive eyes, she whispered, Do you think what we're doing now isn't serious? From what I can tell, your little brother is much more honest than your mouth. With that, she pushed Jean Shuring down onto the couch behind them. After half an hour of passion and indulgence, the two finally calmed down. At this point, the woman lazily sat up and, pulling on Jean Shuring's hand, said, My lord, tomorrow my Wu country's army will be marching south. It's time for you to make a choice. Jean Shuring hesitated and looked down. Then, the woman moved her hand to her belly and said, My lord, even if you don't consider it for yourself, you should think about me, about our child. Upon hearing this, Jean Shuring was suddenly shocked. How is that possible? The woman chuckled lightly. Why not? We've been together so long. Having a child, isn't that the most natural thing? Are you scared? Don't want to take responsibility? At this point, Jean Shuring suddenly snapped back to reality. You've repeatedly urged me to defect to Wu country. Who exactly are you? At this, the woman stood up, dressed herself, took a deep breath, and then replied softly, My name is Wu Yu. I am the cousin of General Wumu of Wu country. As she finished speaking, Jean Shuring stood up and scoffed. General Wu really thinks highly of me to have started using a beauty trap on me over 2 months ago? Wu Yu quickly explained, No, my lord. The Jean family no longer has Jean Zhua as its backbone, and Shen Lang is trapped in White Knight County, his life and death uncertain. We could have easily taken Furious Tide City long ago. The reason I've stayed is that I love you. I want to be with you forever. If you agree to join Wu country, you can truly become the lord of Furious Tide City, and I and our child can always be with you. Moreover, my cousin Wumu is the cousin of King Wu. He is weak alone and needs to cultivate loyal followers, and you, the man I love, are naturally the most suitable choice. Hearing this, Jean Shuring began to waver. He gritted his teeth and asked further, The cost of doing this, does it mean I must betray the Jean family? Wu Yu shook her head. How can it be considered betrayal? The Jean family is already on the brink of extermination. How can there be talk of betrayal? After much deliberation, Jean Shuring asked, What do you want me to do? Wu Yu said softly, Actually, what you need to do is very simple. Just help us open the castle gates and let the Wu country's army enter the main fortress smoothly. Jean Shuring fell silent again. After a long pause, he set his own condition. I can agree to your request, but you must promise me that after it's done, you will spare all members of the Jean family. Upon hearing this, Wu Yu knew she had finally achieved her goal, and she joyfully nestled into Jean Shuring's arms, whispering softly, My lord, rest assured, as long as you agree to this, I will comply with all your wishes. Chan Country's century-old temple, Great Calamity Palace. This magnificent building, once renowned in the Eastern world, was a sanctuary jointly constructed for the monks of Great Calamity Temple by 5 countries and dozens of noble families. However, under the call of Emperor Jianli of the Great Qian Empire, a coalition of 60,000 troops from Qian, Yu, Chu, and Wu turned this exquisite palace into ruins. At the same time, the influence of Great Calamity Temple was eradicated from the Eastern world, forcing its members to flee to the Western regions. In the relentlessly pursuing Arutai and monk Kunan, leading over 40,000 troops, reached the Plaza Number 2, 10 miles from Great Calamity Palace. Here, originally built to defend Great Calamity Palace, was the first defensive castle, but this castle ruin could not withstand that fierce battle, and now only ruins remained. At this moment, monk Kunan, looking at the ruins before him, felt a mix of emotions. As a disciple of Great Calamity Temple, he had experienced that terrible battle and witnessed the entire process process from the temple's revered height to its decline and fall. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something and began looking around. Finally, on a stone wall covered by snow, he saw the name he had carved in his youth. At that moment, all the old grudges and recent grievances surged to his mind, overwhelming him with emotion. Your Holiness, the King of Monks, I have finally returned to Great Calamity Palace. Here, Sunan vows to rebuild Great Calamity Palace and restore the former glory of Great Calamity Temple. Meanwhile, Arutai stood on the other side of the mountain, looking up towards the Great Calamity Palace atop the peak, feeling a completely different set of emotions. I never expected that even after being abandoned for so many years, Great Calamity Palace still maintains such a majestic and imposing presence. Once all this is over, I must rebuild Great Calamity Palace. Even if it cannot serve as a royal palace, it will become my exclusive summer palace. Thinking of Aruna, a fierce look flashed in Arutai's eyes. Once I have destroyed you, the pretender, I will be the only king of Chan country. Now, the Su family has also submitted to me, and the entire Western Celestial Province will be within my grasp. Not just Western Celestial Province. I will also take over much of Yu Kingdom and become the supreme ruler of the entire Eastern world. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became, and with a grand wave of his hand, he shouted loudly, "All troops, prepare for battle. The target, execute the pretender Aruna." As the royal command was issued, the soldiers' morale instantly peaked, and their cries shook the heavens and earth. Just then, a fierce wind suddenly howled, followed by heavy snow falling from the sky. Seeing this, Arutai couldn't help but laugh out loud. This heavy snow is a divine sign from the heavens. Destroy the pretender, conquer the West Province, battle Yu Kingdom, dominate the East. All of it is in accordance with the will of the gods. However, Su Jianting, feeling increasingly anxious, finally couldn't hold back and stepped forward to say, "Your Majesty, you must not proceed any further. I am extremely fearful in my heart. Shenlang is always cunning and will not be easily captured. How about I lead the troops to eliminate Aruna and Shenlang instead?" Upon hearing this, Arutai's expression instantly darkened, and he said displeased, "What are you worth? The head of the pretender Aruna can only be taken by me." Then he turned to Monk Sunan with a smile and said, "Master Sunan, we must rely on your monks as the vanguard this time. Go attack Great Calamity Palace." Upon hearing this, Monk Sunan also laughed heartily. "Chan King, you really are as timid as a mouse, but you need not say more, for today I myself intend to be the first to strike at Great Calamity Palace." With that, he turned and raised his long spear high, shouting, "All monks of Great Calamity Temple, heed my command. Follow me to storm Great Calamity Palace and exterminate all the bandits occupying this place." As his voice fell, 2,000 monks instantly became enraged, raising their machetes and madly charging towards the summit. Meanwhile, at the abandoned palace of Great Calamity Palace, Shenlang, facing the wind and snow, watched the approaching monks and sighed in disappointment. "I thought hiding in Great Calamity Palace would keep us out of the conflict, but I didn't expect Arutai to be so cunning, not sending his main army, but letting monks from Great Calamity Temple scout for him. No choice then, we'll have to fight." As the monks of Great Calamity Temple drew nearer, Aruna and his 3,000 troops were also fully armed and ready for battle. The clash was immediate, and the air filled with cries of battle as both sides plunged into a frenzied melee. Under the lead of Monk Sunan, these monks charged forward like possessed, heedless of their own lives. Their assault was ferociously aggressive, and Aruna's soldiers quickly suffered heavy casualties. At that moment, standing at the rear, Shenlang, watching this scene unfold, felt increasingly anxious. It should be noted that he had buried the last of his explosives on the inevitable path through Great Calamity Palace, intending to trigger an avalanche to annihilate Arutai's entire army in one fell swoop. But with these monks proving so formidable in combat despite their small numbers, each fighting fiercely like a death-seeking soldier, if Arutai's main army doesn't arrive soon, our defenders might not hold. Meanwhile, Arutai, waiting anxiously for news at Plaza Number 2, was also extremely agitated. Hearing the fierce sounds of battle coming from the mountain, he was worried about Monk Sunan. If he went too mad and killed Aruna, what then? Only by personally executing Aruna could he legitimately become the sole king of Chan country. Just then, a messenger arrived and reported, "Your Majesty, the monks of Great Calamity Temple are now clashing with the pretender Aruna's troops, and Aruna's forces are completely outmatched by the monks." Hearing this, Arutai grew even more anxious. Could it be that I've overestimated Shenlang, acting too cautiously? What if Monk Sunan succeeds? What then? With this thought, he immediately turned around and bellowed, "All troops, follow me to the summit of Great Calamity Palace to slay the pretender." At this command, 3 women from the Su family rushed forward crying, grabbing hold of Arutai, trying to stop his decision. "Please, do not act rashly. Shenlang is incredibly cunning. Beware, this might be a trap he has set. Why not wait for Monk Sunan and Aruna to both suffer heavy losses before you clean up the mess?" Looking at the 3 weeping women before him, Arutai felt only irritation and shouted angrily, then pushed them away. "You 3 despicable women, don't think I don't know what that old thief Sunan is planning. You just want Aruna to die at the hands of Monk Sunan. So even if I become the king of Chan, my authority will still be questioned, and you could manipulate me. Put away your schemes and watch carefully. The gods clouds are guiding me to ascend Great Calamity Palace. My imperial ambitions will rise in full at Great Calamity Palace. With this command from Chang King Arutai, his tens of thousands of troops madly charged toward Great Calamity Palace. Atop the mountain, Shenlang, seeing the vast army swarming up, could not help but rejoice. Arutai, I have finally waited for you. Then, he turned around and ordered, Wu Lai, 13, go light the fuse now. As the fuse was lit, Arutai's army was still immersed in their fervent fantasies of completing their grand ambitions. Suddenly, Arutai heard a muffled boom from above and, puzzled, he stopped and looked up. The sight before him made him freeze in place. It wasn't thunder, it was an avalanche. At that moment, the centuries-old accumulated snow, dislodged by the explosives and carrying huge boulders, swept down like a monstrous tsunami. In the face of this earth-shattering avalanche, all the struggles and attempts to flee by Chang King's army were in vain. Even Arutai himself, along with his regrets and his unrealized grand dreams, was forever left on this snowy mountain. At this moment, Shenlang stood atop the mountain, looking down at this tragic and shocking scene, and couldn't help but mock himself. It seems I really worried too much. If I had known the power of the avalanche was this great, there was really no need to gather the Chang army so closely. What a pity for so many of our soldiers. At this moment, over the thunderous islands, a dense fog rose, enveloping the entire Skywind city. Inside the castle, Wumu received a message from Wu Yu that Jin Shuring had agreed to defect to Wu country, and he was immediately overjoyed. It was known that Wu country's plan to capture Furious Tide City was almost certain, and now with Jin Shuring's involvement, it was absolutely foolproof. Then, Wu Yu suddenly said, now that we have Jin Shuring, do we still need to keep trash like Qiu Hao? He previously betrayed Qiu Tianwei, and now he has betrayed Yu Kingdom. I reckon he might betray us one day too. Hearing this, Wu Mu shook his head and said, it's costly to buy loyalty, and it's not good to kill him now. If we kill him now, who else would dare to defect to us in the future? Moreover, our Wu country's navy has just been established not long ago, and we still need Qiu Hao's troops at sea. After pondering for a moment, Wu Yu continued to ask, cousin, once Jin Shuring completes this mission, will you really make use of him? Upon hearing this, Wu Mu couldn't help but burst into laughter. You're already so concerned about this from the start. It seems you've really taken a liking to him. Wu Yu shyly said, he's the best man I could pick. If it weren't for the dire straits the Jin family is in, I believe he would never choose to betray. Hearing this, Wu Mu earnestly advised, you better not let your emotions cloud your judgment. If he truly loyally serves Wu country, His Majesty will surely make use of him. After all, our new king is actively embracing the younger generation's supporters, and the future of Wu country ultimately relies on us young people, not those conservative old fellows. It turns out, Wu country's new king Wu Qi had only recently ascended the throne, and a struggle between the old and new factions had already erupted in the court. The young King Wu was eager for reform and dared to innovate, but those conservative old ministers constantly dragged him down. Consequently, the king had no choice but to employ younger ministers to gradually replace the old ones in the court. As a direct descendant of the Wu king, Wu Mu was one of his confidants, and for this expedition to the south to capture Furious Tide City, the king had even appointed him as the admiral of the navy. However, this campaign was also a battle of fate for Wu Mu, because if he lost this battle, not only would his future be ruined, but even King Wu would face a fierce backlash from the conservative old ministers in the court. Just then, a soldier came to report, Commander, the thick fog outside has mostly dissipated. After hearing this, Wu Mu nodded and then ordered loudly, summon all troops to embark. Follow me to capture Furious Tide City. Half an hour later, over 100 ships majestically sailed towards Furious Tide City, 100 miles away. At this moment, Wu Mu stood on the deck, facing the sea breeze and looking into the distance, pondering quietly. Your Majesty, rest assured, Furious Tide City, Thunderous Islands. In this battle I, Wu Mu, am determined to win. I will not let you down. The scene shifts to the main city of White Knight County. Zhang Chang's battle to defend the city has now entered its 7th day. At this time, the city walls were strewn with the bodies of soldiers, a sight resembling the Hell of Azura. Even the young leader of 1,000 households officer who had earlier questioned Zhang Chong had also finally succumbed due to exhaustion. Unable to withstand the relentless attacks, he died on the battlefield. Now, 3 out of 10 outstanding commanders have fallen, and a third of the 4,000 soldiers have been lost. At this moment, Zhang Chong, looking exhausted, reviews the battle report in his hands. Su Quan's army is so aggressive. Although we've held out until the 7th day, our forces have suffered heavy losses, and I'm really not sure how much longer we can hold on. Just then, a soldier came to report, today, 200 able-bodied men have volunteered to enlist in the city. Hearing this, Zhang Chong nodded and praised. Good, we're in dire need of manpower. Distribute the equipment and send them to the front line. After giving these instructions, he stood up and walked towards the front lines on the city walls. He was well aware that these newly recruited soldiers couldn't compare to the elite troops, but these elite soldiers had been fighting continuously for several days and nights and needed someone to replace them so they could rest. Over these days, he had fought alongside his soldiers, doing everything a commander should and shouldn't do, all to boost the morale of his troops. Yet, with the current state of his forces, he truly didn't know how much longer they could could hold out. At this time, Zhang Chong silently looked towards the direction of the Great Snow Mountain, thinking to himself, Shin young master, how far have you progressed? I, Zhang Chong, can fight to the last breath here, but if we lose White Knight County and the entire situation falls apart because of us, then we will become the eternal sinners of Yu Kingdom. On the snowy peaks, Shin Lang caused an unprecedented avalanche that buried the 40,000-strong army of the Chang nation. Unexpectedly, Chang King Arutai miraculously survived this disaster. On the eve of the avalanche, Sword King Li Qianqiu and Ban Ruo, the Grandmaster from the Chu nation, were engaged in a thrilling battle in front of the ruins of the Great Calamity Palace. Despite his best efforts, Grandmaster Ban Ruo was no match for Li Qianqiu. Throughout the attack, Li Qianqiu always held back. The root of this enmity was the debt left by Li Qianqiu's father-in-law, the former Southern Sea Sword King, before his death. Decades ago, the former Sword King, though handsome, was a thorough scoundrel. Despite having a virtuous wife at home, he still philandered. At that time, although Southern Sea Sword Island already had the peerless sword technique Meteor from Beyond the Heavens, he coveted 2 secret manuals from the Demon Dao Palace. To obtain these manuals, the former Sword King pursued the abbess of Demon Rock Temple relentlessly, completely enchanting her. Deeply ensnared by love, she not only shared intimate moments with him but also handed over the manuals willingly. However, once he obtained the manuals, he ruthlessly turned his back on her, losing all prior tenderness. He unhesitatingly abandoned her, even explicitly stating that he would never divorce his wife. If she wanted to continue the relationship, it had to remain a clandestine affair. The abbess, having sacrificed her monastic reputation and given her heart for this scoundrel, was not about to swallow this insult lightly. For the next 20 years, she embarked on a quest to avenge herself. However, the Sword King proved too cunning. Not only did she fail to harm him, but she was also swayed into several more liaisons with him. Eventually, decades later, the former Sword King passed away, and the abbess followed in sorrow shortly after. On her deathbed, she held the hand of the new abbess, Ban Ruo, and relayed this sordid tale, urging her to cleanse the Taoist sect of this disgrace. After today's battle, Li Qianqiu, burdened by his ancestors' sins, found himself unable to strike a fatal blow against Ban Ruo. After hundreds of exchanges, he finally could not bear it any longer and, with one stroke, sent Ban Ruo's duster flying, then swung his sword at her neck. However, at the critical moment, Li Qianqiu's sword halted at Ban Ruo's neck. At this point, Li Qianqiu said, Sister Ban Ruo, the matters of our master's generation have passed so long. When will you let them go? Ban Ruo, looking disdainfully furious, retorted, I will cease when you are dead, Li Qianqiu. I know I cannot defeat you, so if you wish to kill, then kill. Why bother with this facade? Hearing this, Li Qianqiu sighed and said, I'm sorry, I cannot die yet. How about this? Once young Master Shin has cured my wife's poison, I will personally go to Demon Rock Temple. Then, whether to kill or to skin, it's all up to you. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Grandmaster Ban Ruo unexpectedly drew a sword from her sleeve and stabbed at Li Qianqiu. Just then, a fierce tremor interrupted her sneak attack. Before they could react, a torrential wave of snow surged down from the ruins above, instantly burying the entire Great Calamity Palace. At this moment, the monks fighting above were not affected by the avalanche but were shocked by the scene. Could this be the wrath of the gods? The Great Calamity Palace was completely gone, and Aruna seized this opportunity, brandishing his crescent blade and shouted, The gods favor me, Aruna, surrender now. With these words, the monks, no longer feeling divine protection, fled in terror. Even Kunan monk was stunned. Could today's battle at the Great Calamity Palace be a misunderstanding of the gods' will? Have the gods inflicted divine punishment on us? Meanwhile, on the cliffside, after the avalanche, the surviving Chang army gradually awoke. This also signaled that the avalanche targeting Arutai had ended. Suddenly, a hand emerged from the cliff's edge, and soon Arutai, battered and disheveled, climbed up. At this moment, he was immensely relieved to have survived, thanks to his exceptional martial arts that allowed him to cling to the cliff in the nick of time. But when he saw the devastation before him, he nearly broke down. Where's my grand army? What happened to my 40,000 Chang troops? Just then, a flurry of panicked shouts came from afar, as the monks who had fled down the mountain were scrambling towards them. It's over! It's over! The gods have punished us. We have failed. Amid the panic, a thunderous roar suddenly came from above. Where are you fleeing to? Kneel down. Hearing this commanding voice, all the monks frantically knelt down, praying for the gods' forgiveness. This was actually Shin Lang using Big Fool's inner strength, coupled with the valley's echo effects, to create this divine sound. At this moment, Big Fool continued to shout, Do you not know that Aruna is the only king decreed by the gods for the Chang nation? You dared to follow the false king Arutai to hunt down the true king. Utterly unforgivable. But Arutai, since you defy the gods' will, here is another chance. Let you and Aruna decide the true king of Chang nation, and the loser dies. Are you willing? Upon hearing this, Arutai was instantly thrilled. The gods were giving him a chance to seize the throne. At this moment, Su Jianting rushed up, saying, Do not trust this. Your Majesty, do not believe it. This must be Shin Lang's plot. Let's leave here quickly. Aruna and Shin Lang will not stay on this mountain for long. Once they descend, we can easily annihilate them. Before he could finish, the voice above spoke again. Arutai, don't you want to seize this opportunity to prove who the true king king of Chang Nation is? With this statement, the surrounding Chang soldiers also came forward, echoing, "This is the god's will, Urutai. You must go and fight. If you retreat, you are not worthy to be our king." Urutai, looking at his opportunistic Chang soldiers trembling beside him, was overwhelmed with anxiety and desperately wanted a cigarette. Over the past few months, he had become utterly dependent on the cigarettes provided by Shenlang, needing one every hour to survive. If he couldn't smoke for half a day, he would yawn continuously, completely listless. At this moment, he trembled as he asked Suemo for a cigarette, but Suemo told him that all their supplies had been buried during the avalanche. Suddenly, the voice of the gods rang out again in the valley. "Urutai, are you really willing to give up this supreme kingship, wanting to provoke another wrath of the gods?" Hearing this majestic voice, the Chang soldiers were once again terrified. "The gods are angry, Your Majesty. Go and fight, otherwise, we will all die on this snowy mountain." While Su Jianting and Suemo were very clear that this was Shenlang's plot, they tried vehemently to dissuade Urutai from going to battle. Listening to the fierce debate from both sides, and with his craving for cigarettes flaring up, Urutai was so annoyed that his head was about to explode. He roared and shook off Sumo's pull. "No, this battle with Aruna. I must go and fight, otherwise, I will be abandoned by all remaining Chang troops." Then Urutai shouted, "All men, follow me up to the Great Calamity Palace, to battle Aruna." After saying this, he led the remaining few thousand Chang troops up towards the summit of the snowy mountain. Seeing this, Suemo asked Su Jianting in a trembling voice, "What do we do now? Urutai has fallen into Shenlang's trap." Hearing this, Su Jianting forced himself to calm down. "No, don't panic yet, we still have hope. Urutai's martial arts are strong, although not as good as Father Sunan, but defeating Aruna should be no problem." Thinking this, he turned to discuss with the Su sisters, "Our Su family's rebellion cannot do without the main force of the Chang nation. We must hurry to inform Father. Sulai, you are quick and agile. The task of delivering the message to distant guard Marquis' mansion is yours. Also, Aunt Suemo, come with me to follow Urutai to the Great Calamity Palace. If Shenlang makes any moves, we will be able to recognize them in time." Once everything was arranged, the three split up and rushed towards their respective tasks. At this moment, in the Great Calamity Palace ruined square, both were armed and ready, their eyes filled with ferocity and resolve. Nearly 10,000 soldiers formed a tight circle around them, the atmosphere instantly tense. Inside the ring, referee Grandmaster Ban Ruo was quite depressed. She had come to kill Li Qianxiu, so how had she inexplicably become the arbiter? She sighed helplessly, then shouted loudly, "Urutai, Aruna, the life and death battle begins now. The victor shall be king, the vanquished shall die. With heaven and earth as witness, seen by 10,000, begin the battle." With this command, both sides immediately entered a standoff. At this moment, standing in a corner, the Su family aunt and nephew were extremely nervous. Urutai could indeed die, but he absolutely must not die at this time. Then these tens of thousands of Chang troops would fall under Arunana's command, which would be a disaster for the Su family. And inside the ring, Arunana was also somewhat uneasy. She knew she was originally no match for Urutai, and now she was even pregnant, making the risk of this duel evident. However, since young Master Shen said she would win, she chose to believe it. After all, Shenlang, though a scoundrel, had fulfilled his promises, hadn't he? Thinking this, Arunana took a deep breath, then with a fierce shout, she charged at Urutai. In an instant, the two clashed in close combat, their momentum like two fierce beasts colliding. But Urutai soon realized something was wrong with his body. "This isn't right. I can't muster the strength to resist Arunana's attacks." However, he didn't have time to ponder this as a powerful impact sent him flying. Arunana was also startled by her own burst of strength. "What's going on? Shouldn't I be the one losing? How could Urutai become so weak?" Arunana quickly regained his senses and lunged at Urutai's direction, seizing the opportunity to strike him down. Arunana, with the force of thunder, raised her crescent blade. Fiercely, she slashed at Urutai, and the moment the blade fell, Urutai was cleaved in two from top to bottom, his blood splattering the snow beneath into a stark red. In an instant, this bloody scene shocked all the Chang soldiers present. At this moment, they looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion and bewilderment. So the god-appointed king was indeed Arunana. The next second, coming to their senses, they began to shout in unison, "Arunana is our true ruler of the Chang nation. God bless our queen. Long live the queen." At this time, Shenlang, seeing the opportunity was ripe, jumped out and said, "Fellow soldiers, the disrespect you showed under the influence of the false king will not be pursued by the queen. Now that everyone has seen that the true king designated by the gods is Arunana, let us now catch those who have misled you." With that, he pointed directly at Su Jianting and Suemo, ordering loudly, "Men, take Su Jianting and Suemo into custody immediately." Upon hearing this order, Su Jianting instantly broke into a cold sweat, regretting deeply, "Damn it, Shenlang, what did you do to make Arunana win? I really should have gone to deliver the message myself instead of following this fool Urutai up here." But now it was too late. At this moment, before the captors could approach, he dashed away like lightning toward the back. "Big fool, Wu Lai," and others saw this and immediately got up to chase. Arunana wanted to join the chase but was stopped by Shenlang. "Sister-in-law, you are the new king of the Chang nation. How can you personally chase such scum?" "Don't worry, Big Fool is here." His gaze tightly locked onto the fleeing figure of Su Jianting, his mouth curling into a slight scornful smile. If it were anywhere else, he might have a chance to escape, but on this snowy mountain, even if he exhausts all his true energy, he absolutely can't outlast Big Fool's astonishing stamina. Shenlang, seeing that the situation was under control, turned his attention away from the follow-up. He turned to Shen 13 and said, "Bring over the throne we prepared earlier." Moments later, a heavy and majestic stone chair was carried over by several soldiers. When Aruna sat on the throne, a natural kingly aura emanated from her. Subsequently, thousands of Chang soldiers knelt down uniformly before her. Looking at this scene, Shenlang felt a deep satisfaction. Chang soldiers have always followed the strong. Aruna's victory today is enough to secure her the highest position in the hearts of the soldiers. Suddenly, a thin and helpless figure crouched in front of Arutai's body. This once arrogant queen of the Chang nation still couldn't believe that Arutai had died by Aruna's hand. At this moment, Shenlang approached her with a smile. Suemo looked up at him and asked, "Shenlang, Arutai lost because you tampered with something, right? It must be you. You added something to his cigarettes. You are really poisonous. You've been setting this up for months. First Aragang, and now Arutai, including that Avalanche was all your plotted scheme." Hearing these accusations, Shenlang merely shrugged and continued smiling at her. Seeing this, what else did Suemo not understand? At this moment, she dejectedly lowered her head, murmuring, "It's my fault, all my fault. I noticed the abnormalities long ago but didn't try hard enough to dissuade him because of my own arrogance." "Shenlang, why do you always oppose our Su family?" Shenlang's smile faded, and he coldly replied, "To let my family and I live in peace, and I have only one goal, to completely annihilate your Su family." Hearing this, Suemo laughed self-deprecatingly, her eyes showing a trace of affection, and she slowly closed Arutai's eyes. Then she stood up and calmly said to Shenlang, "It seems I can't leave here alive today. I don't want to die at the hands of others. Can you let me end it myself?" Shenlang was silent for a moment, then nodded, saying, "Farewell." Suemo bowed to him one last time, then walked towards the cliff. Seconds after she leaped, a heavy thud was heard as she hit the ground. While few were concerned about Sumo's death, for these soldiers in their prime, the loss of such a peerless beauty was indeed a pity. Hearing these comments, Shenlang also realized, it seems Suemo also anticipated her own fate. For her, this self-ending is also a kind of release.